Hey guys, Anashi here. Today is Top 3 Tuesday of my 3 favorite RPGs on the PlayStation 1 that I owned back then and I played back then. Nothing on this list will be games that I played later in life and enjoyed. This is just a point-in-time retrospective of the PlayStation 1 in celebration of me getting 100 PlayStation 1 titles in my collection. I recently picked up a bunch of PS1 games, and I wanted to do something in celebration for hitting 100 PlayStation 1 games. There are so many good RPGs I played back then. Some very notable ones like Final Fantasy VII, Legend of Dragoon, Vagrant Story, but also there was a lot of games that I wish I played back then but just never knew about. Like Suikoden 1 and 2, Valkyrie Profile, Thousand Arms, Xenogears, Star Ocean, Persona games, the Lunar games, and there's just so many more. I mean, look at this, the handful of right here. I'd like to mention that, Final Fantasy IX, that was my favorite Final Fantasy game on the PlayStation and my second favorite overall of all the Final Fantasy games. But I did not play that. I played that about 2008, I think. Yeah, I think it was roughly about 2008. And, same thing about the Breath of Fire games, about 3 and 4. I played later in life, and I absolutely love them. They're some of the best pixel art on any PlayStation 1 game. With that being said, this is my top 3 PlayStation 1 games that I played when they came out. Alright, so number 3 on my list is, I told myself I wouldn't do this, but I was looking at my list and I wouldn't put a Final Fantasy game on the list because, like everyone loves Final Fantasy games, but this one was more unique. This one actually got me into the love of tactical games. So the first game on my list is Final Fantasy Tactics. I know it's not the first tactical RPG that was ever released, but it was the first one that I played, and I did not even know about that genre at the time. They had games like Langrisser, Fire Emblem, Shining games. This was my first introduction into tactics-based games. So, and I use this game when I want to compare any other tactical RPG. I actually just put it up. This is the bar for me. If it's better than this, it's a really good RPG, tactical RPG. If it's not, it's not so much. So this one right here is number 3 on my list for that. There is a remake on the PSP that named A War of Lions, which will give you, it's like a better translation of the game. This has a very poor translation. It gives you extra battles, animated cutscenes. It gives you more. Right now, nowadays, it's the preferred way to play. It's the definitive edition of Final Fantasy Tactics, but this one right here still holds a place in my heart as an amazing game. I love the whole job-based approach. You can change your jobs, level up your characters into those jobs, switch them out, try something new, you learn the new skills. You could take the abilities from one class to another class, and you could learn different skill combinations just to completely break the game if you want. So it's just so many things you could do with this game, and it doesn't, it just kind of lets you to your own imagination of what you want to do with your tactics game. Now this, you only control 5 characters at once. It's a really good game. So that is my number 3. Alright, for my number 2, I got a little story here. So when I was a young kid, my mother bought me a Game Boy from a coworker, guy named Gordy, and he was a smoker. Now, the case that the Game Boy came in, it was a cloth case that had 3 games, Tetris, Alleyway, and Tennis. It smelled of cigarettes really bad, just a little thing I remember. But the first game that I was given was Final Fantasy Legend. I just finished up Final Fantasy on NES, and I wanted to play a new Final Fantasy, and I heard that there was a Final Fantasy Legend on Game Boy. So the reason I mentioned the Game Boy was that in Japan, the Final Fantasy Legend was called Saga. Square put a lot of titles of games as Final Fantasy just to Americans know what Final Fantasy is, and they don't want to introduce a new series. So they just called it Final Fantasy Legend. There was 3 of them on the Game Boy, which was Saga 1, 2, and 3. And just like the Final Fantasy Adventures, which is the Mana series. So, yeah. So, with saying all that, my favorite game I played back then on the PlayStation 1 was Saga Frontier. Now, this is Saga Frontier 2, obviously. I lost my first copy of the game. I'm still on the hunt for Saga Frontier 1, but, I'll find it someday. It will happen. Probably sooner than later. So, Saga Frontier was the first North American release of the game that was, let's see how to put it, wasn't the 2-color graphic of a Game Boy. It was, fully colored pixel art goodness on here. Now, it doesn't have as good a pixel art as, Breath of Fire, but it's still really good sprites on it. And the background was, was kind of like it's 2D sprites on a 3D background, which was kind of cool. So just like Final Fantasy Legend, you pick your party of characters. There's 7 main characters in the game. You got humans, robots, and magical being race, monsters. And you pick one main character, and you go through the story. And as you beat the main story with that character, your stats will go up. And once you finish the game with that character, you could roll that character over to your next playthrough, and you could get all 7 characters playthrough. Then it unlocks a special room, which was pretty neat back then. Now, characters, they learn skills and stats on how they do battle. So if you use a sword, and you get more strength, and you get more new abilities, sword abilities, and everything. If you take a lot of damage, then you get more HP. That's how you leveled up in the game. It was really hard game to play. Your characters can be killed for good. Yeah, you heard it. Permadeath. So you have these life points in the game. If your life points go to 0, you're dead. You're gone. Your character is dead. You have to start over on there. So, what got me quite a few times back then was you had fights where some enemies would remove your life points and will permadeath your characters, and so you had to watch out for that. So that's I had a lot of fun with it, just trying to learn. Just brought a lot of memories back from the Game Boy game back then, and I really enjoyed the whole Saga series. It's pretty good. So give it a try if you haven't tried it. Try Saga Frontier 1 and 2. So that's my number 2. Alright, for my number 3 game, I got another short story. I'll keep it quick. So it was the summer of 1997, and I just graduated high school and started summer vacation. I went over to our local Walmart, which was the only place in town to buy games. It was a small town. You would have to go 45 minutes away to a Best Buy. So I looked at the glass case at Walmart, and I saw I saw a game, Wild Arms, in the case, and I just overlooked it a few times because it was a Western game. It looked like just like a Western game. I'm like, I don't know. I'd never heard about it. So I finally asked to look at the game, and it turned out that it was an RPG. I did not know that until I turned over to the back. It's like Western game plus RPG? Yes, please. So I grabbed it and played it all summer long. Absolutely fell in love with it and the characters. You had 3 characters that meet and join together to save the world from demons. Sounds pretty epic, right? So the graphics were done in my favorite type of graphics, 16-bit style. It had some 3D graphics during battles, which were not the best in the world. But those were the times, and that's what a lot of games were doing. Like Final Fantasy VII just had it did not age well. This aged very well. So it started off with you would pick one of your 3 characters to start with, the 3 main characters, and each of them all had different stories where they began with. And you had a treasure hunter, a rich noble girl who's a magic user, an orphan boy, and you could switch between all three, and eventually they all combine into one story. So I played it, and I beat the game, and I just absolutely loved it. Later, I found out that there was actually an anime for this. I was actually recently just able to find this, so I have all of it right here. I've started watching it. It's pretty good so far, and you know, I'm going to enjoy that. There was 5 Wild Arms games in the series. This has been remade on the PlayStation 2. There's also Wild Arms 2, which is on the PlayStation 1, and Wild Arms 3, 4, and 5 are on the PlayStation 2. There was a PSP version of it also, which I believe was the PSP version was just another remake of the first one. So you know, that is my number 1 game of the RPGs that I played back when they first came out. This was only out for about a month and a half before I bought it. It came out in April of 1997, so I was really happy to play this game. Enjoyed it. I've been enjoying a lot of these games, as you can see right here. You know, you got the Lunars and everything. So that is my top 3 Tuesday. So do me a favor, tell me what your top 3 games are on the PlayStation 1. And a side note, I was going to completely cry if those fell down. I would be very, very sad. So that was my top 3 Tuesday. And I will see you next week with my next top 3 games. So later, guys.